Good day, teachers, and welcome to another session of Teaching Profession. At this juncture in time, we will be discussing RA 4670, or the Magna Carta for Public School Teachers. Before we go to our lesson, I just want to ask you briefly, what do you think Magna Carta stands for? Well, I did my research, and according to Oxford Dictionary, during the time of King John of England in 1215, he actually signed a legal document, that gave specific rights to some English citizens, and that was called the Magna Carta. In other words, Magna Carta, it means the Great Charter. And the Magna Carta that King John signed, as I mentioned earlier, it contained all the rights. So when we talk about Magna Carta for public school teachers, basically it means this is a document that contains all the rights that are pertained to public school teachers. So let's delve into our study. But before that, I would like you to put yourself in an administrator's shoes. If you were an administrator, how would you attract and retain highly qualified teachers to be a part of your teaching force? Perhaps some of you would like to increase the teacher's salary. Oh, that is a good thing. What else? Well, some of you might have thought of providing good housing for teachers. That is another one. Yes, you are right. Perhaps some of you thought of providing good medical benefits. Well, let us see how the government created a specific provision for public school teachers. For our lesson today, we have 3 learning outcomes that we would like to achieve. At the end of the discussion, I would like you, as my learner, to evaluate if the provisions on the law would meet the declaration of policy here, the RA 4670's declaration of policy. And second, at the end of our discussion, I would like you to hypothesize, what do you think are some of the items that were not included that could have been included in the provisions of the law, so that it could fulfill the declaration of policy. And third, I would like you to create a collage about RA 4670 so that you can explain it to your friends more easily, and at the same time, you can also remember it. We will be going back to these learning outcomes after our discussion. So let's move along to the first part of our lesson. Let us talk about declaration of policy. RA 4670 Section 1 declares that it is the government's duty to improve and to ensure that the social and economic status of teachers are well taken care of. And the second one is it wants also to ensure that teachers have they have good living and working conditions, and that their employment and career prospects are well taken care of. And all of these the government were trying to do because they would like to attract and retain highly qualified teachers. So when we talk about RA 4670, its main focus is to ensure that the social economic status of teachers, their living and working conditions, as well as their employment and career prospects are put into view, so that highly qualified teachers will be attracted and retained. Now, the 4670, RA 4670, it is entitled what again? Yes, the Magna Carta for Public School Teachers. Let us then define, what does the teachers mean according to this law? You know, when you talk about legal basis, it is important that you understand the legal terms and the terms that are used in the law. And at this time, let us see how the law defines teachers. So first, the law tells us that teachers are those individuals who are engaged in any level of instruction. When we say any level of instruction, you could be in the primary level, you could be in the secondary level. So as long as you are engaged in any level of instruction, you are considered teacher, provided that you are working on a full-time basis. Perhaps later on you will see a question. If teacher X is only teaching half a day every single day, and then he works as a nurse for another half of the day, will he be considered as a teacher? Well, according to RA 4670, a teacher should be engaged in any level of instruction on a full-time basis. So there's no part-timer here, okay? The second one, teachers are not only those who are teaching. These are also individuals who are considered as teachers. They are the guidance counselors, the school librarians, we have the industrial art or vocational instructors. Even though these individuals do not teach per se, but because they are part of the school, that they are also considered as teachers, meaning the provisions in this law can also apply to these ones, okay? To the guidance counselors, to the school librarians, to the industrial arts and vocational instructors. The other group of individuals who belong to the category of teachers according to this law are those who are doing supervisory or administrative functions in the institution. So for example, the principal might not be teaching, but since the principal is in charge of supervisory or administrative function, then he is considered as a teacher and he is part of the provisions in RA 4670. Okay? So don't forget when we say teachers according to 4670, these are anyone who is engaged in any level of instruction, those who are working on a full-time basis. This may include the guidance counselors, the school librarians, the vocational and industrial arts instructor, as well as those who are doing the supervisory and administrative roles. Okay? Now, who then are not considered as teachers? Well, these are the ones that are excluded in the provisions of RA 4670. So these individuals are not considered teachers according to this law. Those are the school nurses, the school physicians, and the school dentists. Well, you may say, sir, why is it that these individuals are not considered as teachers? Honestly, I don't know, but because the law says they are not teachers, then they are not teachers. It's just like that, okay? We just have to follow what the law says. And also, those professorial staff of state colleges and universities are not considered as teachers either. It means that they are not part of the Magna Carta for public school teachers, okay? Now, let us take a look at the qualifications that were mentioned in Section 3 of RA 4670. It says here that if you are a kinder and elementary school teacher, you must at least have earned your Bachelor of Elementary Education. Again, there is no other degree for a kinder and elementary teacher than BE Ed. However, if you are teaching in a secondary level, you may take Bachelor of Secondary Education or equivalent. You will say, sir, what does the equivalent mean? Now, there can be Bachelor of Secondary Christian Education, like the one I took, or Bachelor of Secondary Holistic Education, which can be another degree. So it can be any other degree. It can be an equivalent degree of Bachelor of Secondary Education. But that is not the only one. Okay? Anyone who graduated with a degree in Bachelor of Arts, example, AB History, AB English, AB Psychology, these individuals, provided that they have earned minimum, I repeat, it's minimum of 18 professional education units, then they are eligible to teach in the secondary level. But they are not the only ones. Those who are graduates of Bachelor of Science in nursing, in mathematics, Bachelor of Science in psychology, in biology, whatever degree you have, as long as it's a Bachelor of Science degree, plus if you have earned 18 professional education units, you should be qualified to teach in the secondary level. So again, let me just make sure that we understand. If I were a graduate of Bachelor of Science in Nursing, and I have earned 18 units. Can I teach in the elementary level? Yes or no? The answer is no, you cannot. Because for elementary education, you should be a degree holder of Bachelor of Elementary Education. However, if you are a graduate of BSN and you take 18 units, you can teach in secondary level, but not in the elementary level. Is that clear? All right, good. Let's move to the next one. When it comes to tertiary level, only those who have earned their MA degrees are eligible or are qualified to teach in the tertiary level. So these are the qualifications that were outlined in RA 4670, Section 3. Let us take a look at the security and tenure of teachers according to the Section 5 of this law. According to this law, a teacher should have security of tenure. What does security of tenure mean? Security of tenure, it means that the teacher cannot just be fired without any reason, meaning that they can hold on to their job as long as they are doing a good job. They cannot just be fired easily. They have the security of tenure. And security of tenure is very good because everyone wants to be assured that you will have a good job, that you can provide for your family. Okay? Another one is that those who were under provisional status, what makes them what the goodness is, after 10 years of your continuous and faithful service, you can now have your security of tenure. So if you started in a if you started with provisional status and you have done your work for the past 10 years, then you will be eligible for security of tenure. Okay? Let's take a look now at some of the provisions that talks about the transfer of teacher according to Section 6 of RA 4670. Well, a teacher cannot just be transferred to another institution without the consent of the teacher himself. So for example, if I were a principal of a school and then I didn't like Teacher Cruz, so I want Teacher Cruz to be transferred to another school, well, I have to have the consent of Teacher Cruz. If he agrees, then he can be transferred. But if he does not want, I have no right to transfer him. So the teacher's consent is important when it comes to transfer of their workplace. Also, a teacher, even though it is of your own willingness, if it's going to be an election will happen in about 3 months' time, then you cannot be transferred at that time yet. So for example, the election is in March, meaning in the month of January, you cannot be transferred yet. But after March, after the election, then you can be transferred. Why do you think so? Remember, one of the roles that teachers play in the community is that they work as election personnel, right? They help in the election. And so to make sure that there will be no bias or that there will be no problems when it comes to election, then they have done this mandate that in less than 3 months, no one should be transferred. But right after election, there can be transfers done. Okay? And if the teacher gives consent to be transferred, then and it is not basically just what the teacher wants, but let's say that the district supervisor wanted Teacher Cruz to transfer to another division, well, the government should be paying for the moving expenses of the teacher. Okay? Now, let's talk about the safeguard for disciplinary procedures according to Section 8 of RA 4670. Well, I would like you to really listen to the safeguards for these disciplinary procedures because sooner or later you will be teachers and you have to know your specific rights. Number one is that you have the right to be informed in writing of the charges against you. So if the principal tells you, Miss Cruz, someone filed a case against you, and yet you have not received in writing the charges, then the principal or that person is violating your inalienable rights. So you have the right to be informed, not verbally, not through video, not through phone call, but in writing of the charges against you. Aside from that, you should also have full access to the evidences against or for you. So if the person says, if the person files a case against you for child abuse and they said that it is the CCTV that will prove that you are guilty, you have to remember that you have the right to access to the evidences that will be used for or against you. Okay? And third is you have the right to defend yourself as well as to be defended. When I say defend yourself, then you can choose your own lawyer. And if you cannot afford a lawyer, you have the right to receive lawyers from PAO or Public Attorney's Office. You can also be defended by different organizations that you choose to defend you. It is your right to defend yourself and to be defended as well. And let's say that the case has already been decided and you do not agree with the outcome of the case, then you are entitled to have an appeal. And of course, your appeal will be only to the authorized agency. So if the case did not go your way and you would like to appeal for it, you have the right to do that. And remember that during while the case is ongoing, you have the right for your privacy, meaning there should be no publicity. There should be no publicity until the case has been decided. Recently, you were aware of what happened to a public school teacher who was the subject of a TV program by Tulfo, right? During that time, there was so much publicity. So Tulfo called the mother. There was no written charges against the mother, as well as perhaps against the teacher. And perhaps the teacher was not even able to see the CCTV, so was not given proper access to the evidences. So in this case, we can say that her rights were violated. Okay? And again, future teachers, you have to know your rights. You have to assert your rights, and you have to make sure that you know what to do when things happen. Okay? So, what are the other provisions according to RA 4670? One of the other provision is that if you and your spouse are both public school teachers, you should be assigned in same locality. Okay? So it can be in the same town, it may be in the same school, but doesn't have to be that way. But at least it should be in the same locality. It could be the same town or it could be the same district. Yeah? But it cannot be on different regions. As much as possible, you have the right to request for transfer if both you and your spouse are public school teachers. And as a teacher, you have the right to enjoy your academic freedom, meaning no one should be able to dictate how you will assess your students, provided that you follow the standard, or how you will teach your students, of course, again, provided that you follow the standard, or the strategies that you will be using. You have the right to express yourself, your originality, your creativity, as long as it's bound by academic freedom. Okay? And remember that in public school, especially nowadays, this is a very big issue. Their school teacher should only be teaching maximum of 6 hours. So that should be 6 hours of active teaching. However, there are some instances when the teacher might be requested to teach beyond 6 hours. Is that legal or not? Raise your hand if you think it's legal. Okay. Raise your hand if you think it is not legal. Here's the answer. If you are asked to teach beyond 6 hours, it is okay, provided that it is not more than 8 hours of active teaching. So The ideal is 6 hours. Why? So that you have other hours to use to check the student's work. However, you can be asked to teach for at least for more than 6 hours, but not longer than 8 hours. But you are entitled to 25% of basic pay, an additional payment, because you are teaching beyond 6 hours. The other provisions are if you are assigned in a place where it is difficult for you to travel, you are entitled for hazard pay, or we call it special hardship allowance. Now, not everyone can ask for special hardship allowance. It is not up to you. You actually have to inform the Secretary of Education, and then the Secretary of Education will be the one to decide whether your assignment is eligible to receive special hardship allowance. For example, if you are from the town and then you are assigned in the mountains of Mindoro and you have to hike and you have to cross several rivers in order to reach your school, then you are entitled for special hardship allowance. Okay? The other one is that no deductions are allowed from your basic pay except those that are lawful. What are examples of lawful deductions? So number one, it could be your medical contributions or your health insurance, things like that. It's also about the pag-ibig, the PhilHealth, things like that. But aside from those, no deductions should be no deduction should be taken from your salary. Okay, and then you are actually eligible for medical examination. RA 4670 outlines that you should have medical examination at least once a year until you stop teaching. And it even says there that in case there are no hospitals where you are assigned and you have to travel to another place, the government should pay for your medical travel expenses. Okay, so that is that is one of your rights as well. The other provisions is that you are considered to you can take your study leave to finish your dissertation or your thesis writing. However, you should have rendered at least 7 years of service, and you should not have taken this study leave before. Okay, and while you are on study leave, you can actually have a 60% of pay. Okay, now we have indefinite sick leave. Indefinite sick leave, this is given to individual who is ill and may need at least more than a year of treatment. Example, you find out that you have a cancer and it may take you at least a year for the treatment, then you can file for indefinite sick leave. But indefinite sick leave does not mean that you are paid. But the beauty of that is after you are healed, when you are better, then you can go back and teach. But while you are taking your medicine, while you are undergoing treatment, you are not paid, of course. But at least after that, whenever you want to go back, you always have a job to go back to. Okay? And then lastly, another one is that any teacher has the freedom to join any organization. While the principal and other teachers can just recommend a specific organization, but if you do not like that, you have the right to choose any organization of your liking. Okay? Now, in conclusion, RA 4670 is created because the government is aware that teachers play a pivotal role in the society. Remember, we teachers, we are the one who mold the future leaders. We are also the instrument in cascading the values that we want our future generation to put into heart, right? And we are also the ones who should teach them about culture as well as about nationalism. And the government is aware of these important roles that we play, right? And having said that, this RA 4670 proves that public school teachers are the government's right arm. We are so important that the government pays special attention to the rights and privileges of public school teachers. And as educators, as professional teachers in the future, you should all be aware of your inalienable rights. Know your rights and do not let anyone trample on it. Now that we have discussed everything, let us go back to our learning outcomes. Number one, by listening to this lecture, I believe that you now will be able to evaluate it. And second is you have learned some of the provisions that I mentioned, and I'm sure that you have also read RA 4670 yourself. Well, now you can hypothesize, you can add what are other items that may not have been included but you would like to include. That would be part of your task. And later, through these ones, by learning about RA 4670, I believe that you are now able to create a collage about it. So thank you very much for joining in our discussion today, and I look forward to another sessions with you. God bless you and happy learning.